All right, welcome everybody to this week's edition of Pluralia Dialogos. I have a special guest joining me today, Larry Johnson, who needs no introduction. Larry, how are you doing today?
I'm awake and I got my coffee, so I'm in good shape.
All right, that's a good start. You're one step ahead of me. I didn't get my coffee yet.
Uh-oh.
But we are awake, so that gives us a lot to work with. Larry, I don't want to waste any of your time, so I'm going to just jump right into it. You know, it's been already well over a week that this new security doctrine came out. There's obviously, everybody has commented upon it. I've noticed that there's a lot of polarization generally when listening to the commentators who either are 100% gung-ho, happy, and ecstatic that the end of, oh, my wrong microphone is on. That the end of, that might be a bit better.
Yeah. I hear you.
That we've achieved the end of hegemony, the place of restoration of nationalism and end of wars and cooperation, and then you've got, and I don't, that's probably overly extreme, and then you have the other response, the other extreme that I've heard a lot of, that's basically just saying this is lipstick on a pig. There's nothing legitimate in any of this. It's just rebranded global imperialism. I don't know. There's definitely things that I personally find that made me smile reading through the 33 pages or so of that document. Hold on one second. I'm just getting a scam call. That's bad timing. There's definitely things that made me smile, but at the same measure, it does smell like there are whiffs of Trojan horses, toxic ideas of Teddy Roosevelt corollaries that have done a lot of damage historically to justify very bad things, specifically the perversion of the Monroe Doctrine, that may be something we see coming back, especially with other signs. So I'm curious to get your take. Where do you stand on this new security doctrine? Is there anything new and workable, or is this, in your mind, more or less garbage?
Well, I start from the premise of turning the question around and saying, can you name me a single national security strategy document written in the last 30 years that has been the guide and resulted in certain policies by whatever president? I can't recall any. So let's put that into perspective. This is sort of a, I'll call it a Washington, D.C. ritual. It doesn't necessarily mean a lot in terms of, it's not like Donald Trump sitting over there at the White House and saying, turn to page 13, please. Let's read that and see what we're going to do today.
Right.
No, that's not how it works. Clearly, the authors of this document reflected a different mindset than what has been the dominant theme in Washington over the last, good Lord, 20 years. Over the last 20 years, and especially starting under Obama, the image of China as an adversary, as an enemy, increased, didn't diminish. Similarly, the same attitude towards Russia. So what this document now reflects is a less adversarial stance towards it. But the United States is not going quietly into that good night. We're raging against the storm. We've been in charge. We've been the top dog. We're the most important country in the world. Did you know we're the best country? Nobody's better than us.
Yeah.
And so that mindset still prevails. What I was fascinated with is that, Ukraine was only mentioned sort of as a sideshow, that, okay, basically that's Europe's problem. Well, that reflects what, Trump has been trying to push Ukraine off onto Europe's lap all year long, except that the United States, sort of like a heroin addict, can't let go, man. We got to, we keep providing intelligence and we keep supplying arms if we can. So we haven't, we haven't gone cold turkey on Ukraine, but the overall theme of this is Europe's problem, let Europe hassle with it. The concept that we're going to disengage from the Middle East, it was all based on the premise that we obliterated Iran's military capability,
right?
Which we did not. and that the Israelis got the Gaza situation fully in hand, which they do not. So despite the words on the paper, I don't see the United States, quote, withdrawing. And in fact, given events in the last 48 hours, it's probably going to increase again with this attack by the so-called ISIS terrorists, who's one of their brothers we embraced and put in as president of Syria. We're now declaring war on ISIS. So this, taken overall, yeah, there is a different mindset reflected in the words, but none of it implies that the United States is willing to acknowledge that BRICS is a new financial order, that the United States ought to be integrating with that instead of competing with it, and that the forces that are driving the conflict in the world is primarily the fault of the United States, not other countries.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. It seems like European leaders right now are escalating their language in a way that I've not seen this type of spike in rhetoric. To what degree? I mean, here, I'm going to actually just play a clip that many people probably saw. It's only 18 seconds long of Rutte reminding people or acclimating people's minds across Europe that they need to accept the fact that the dynamic of World War is back. Nothing you can do about it, just accept it. So here's Mark Rutte.
Conflict is at our door. Russia has brought war back to Europe. And we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured. Imagine it. A conflict reaching every home.
It goes on, but you get the gist.
Jesus, yeah, I know these guys. They have completely lost touch with reality.
They really have.
And this next scale of war will be nothing like World War II or World War I. It will potentially be far more destructive. And the cities of Europe will be hit in a way that they never were. I mean, Germany, Germany took a shellacking. London suffered some damage. Paris remained largely intact. But not if if the West, if the NATO countries are determined to combat Russia, they will lose. Russia will destroy them.
Well, and that does create a bit of a stark contrast because, again, the language, and I agree with you, I'm waiting to actually see some real action behind the language, but the language, at least in the security doctrine that's been floated by whatever apparatus is, writing such things inside of Washington at the moment, definitely takes a pretty harsh tone towards Europe as a whole. I think even relegating it to civilizational extinction within 20 years, or like really, really radical language that I don't disagree with in terms of that assessment. Also, generally speaking, in a pretty favorable way about a need for peace and to see Russia a little bit more on a collaborative level, even. So these are useful words. And the contrast between that kind of shift in language to this radical escalation from the likes of Rutte, Ursula, even, Merz coming around saying just today that the era of Pax Americana is over and a fundamental change in the transatlantic relationship is underway. Do you think that Merz is correct? Does he know what he's talking about? Is there a fundamental change in the transatlantic relationship that he's thinking about? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, no, I think he is correct on that, and we need it. I mean, I ask people one question: why do we need Europe? What is the relevance of Europe? They're not a source or supplier of important natural resources. They're not on the lead of technology and science anymore. They were in the 19th century.
Yeah.
No longer. That's moved beyond them. They are weak militarily. They are weak economically. And so the natural question is, why does the United States even want to be linked to them? the common, we talk about a common heritage. And, you go back to the fact that the early settlement of the United States, what we now know as the United States, the colonists came primarily from Europe. And again, what was sort of fascinating, what was driving that was, by and large, they were fleeing religious conflict, the war that was raging between Catholics and Protestants, various versions of that. I know that in my family that was a major factor. I had people, ancestors showing up here in the 1600s. So, I can claim to be a Native American if being in one place more than 400 years counts as native. But again, that connection with Europe, it was cultural, it was religious, but again, that's breaking down. We see that sort of what was defining about Europe. One of the defining characteristics of Europe was was Christianity, and both it was the general religious faith of the populations, and it was also the major cause of most of the wars between different, let's put it between the Catholics and the Protestants. What's fascinating is Eastern Orthodox Christianity was not even a part of that. They were on the outside looking in. Then the colonial mentality that, Europe was this colonial power that basically went out around the world raping other countries. We can clean it up and say, oh, they were bringing civilization and, all that nonsense. But people in China, people in India, people in Central and South America, people in Africa tend to see things a little differently. And so now we're witnessing the end of that empire, that the colonial empires that constituted Europe are coming to an end. They have no way to reconstitute themselves, to recreate themselves. The world has moved past them. And that's also what's happening now to the United States. The United States is in this transition period where our dominance, our hegemony, both economically, culturally, scientifically, is being rapidly dissipated. China, in particular, has emerged now as an industrial power like nothing we've seen in history since modern industry started. It's so far ahead of the United States. The United States is still in denial. We like to pretend that there's still these, making cheap trinkets to sell overseas.
Yeah.
So America's failure to come to grips with that brings us back to Europe and this, again, what's it good for? Like, the song War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It's Europe.
They could do a rebranded 21st century update of that song. Little challenge out there for any musicians who are maybe looking for some inspiration. Well, look, you brought the point of the effect, like the change of thinking when you look at China's approach to thinking about economics, and everybody uses the word economics, but not everybody means the same thing with the same word. As we see clearly that in the West, we perhaps once did have a healthier, grounded idea of what the term meant when we were still building things. And, you had multi-generational projects that were stimulating the ambitions and the goals for society. That was before my time, but I've read about it. I like history. And I see that was an important part of what made Europe viable after the 30 Years' War was the Colbertist revolution of dirigist economics that, built these Midi canals, these big infrastructure projects that forced the money system to behave according to some idea of a principle of value that was objectively true, not just exploitative or extractive or speculative or whatever. And that, the best of times in the US, we saw that emerge in cloudy ways, but emerge, which was good. And then same thing for Europe under de Gaulle and the better times that built the stuff that's been atrophying now for 50 plus years. China's doing it. Like, they're actually, when they talk about economics, they've got 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. They've got more hydroelectric dams, nuclear power plants coming online, next generation frontier tech that they're pouring their investments into. So it's a stark contrast. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, either we become irrelevant, we launch World War III out of insecurity of this dynamic that we can't seem to quite put in the box, put in the cage. So if you can't dominate it, destroy everything, or maybe feasibly, hopefully, there might be something within us in the West that might be reminded maybe of looking at what China and their allies are doing, to think maybe we could learn how to be good again, or learn how to do things again. Is there any possibility in your mind that there's something viable within Europe, maybe to restore a sense of healthy culture amidst the sinking Titanic of the Eurozone and NATO? Or do you think that that's like, we need more crisis, more pain before we can finally have that type of healthier, constructive self-examination and thinking in the Western society?
Crisis and pain, man. That's going to be the only way out. I mean, let's talk about the delusional thinking. Oh, the future, we're being told that the future of the economy, where all the money's going, is AI, correct?
Yeah.
All right. What do you need in order to have AI be what it is? You need
energy,
electrical energy, power, electricity,
and water.
Yeah. So you look at where Europe is in terms of power generation, they're declining. I mean, they're tearing down nuclear reactors. You look at the United States, we haven't built, we really have not built any significant nuclear reactors in the last 10 years. And yet the power demands are growing. Really only 2 countries in the world right now have systems in place to power this future. That would be China and Russia. And Russia's way behind. I mean, China is so far ahead on power generation that if the future is AI and the future is dependent upon electrical power, China's won. They've already won. There's nothing the West can do to catch up unless the West completely mobilized on a war footing. And what I mean by that is you tell people, hey, we're gonna ration. You no longer get to drive wherever you want. We're going to ration gasoline. You're going to be limited to this much. We're not selling any more new cars. I mean, we go on a wartime footing like we did in World War II. Yeah, everybody's got to pitch in. We got to build these power plants. Well, we're not going to do that because the public opinion wouldn't put up with it right now. It's only when the ship is sunk and you're looking for a lifeboat that all of a sudden you may, hey, I think a lifeboat is pretty important. That's where that sort of hierarchy of needs kicks in. Let's also look militarily. It's akin that you got 500 people standing out in front of your house threatening to burn your house down. You have one rifle, a semi-automatic, the AR-15, the M4, the assault rifle that we talk about. And you got 60 rounds of ammunition, 60 individual pieces of ammunition to shoot. How's that going to work out? You might kill or maim 60 to 100 people, thinking a bullet can go through and hit somebody else. What do you do about the other 400 that would come in and beat you to death? So that's where the West is right now. We are military, despite spending, the United States in particular, despite spending more money on the Department of War, aka Department of Defense, and the U.S. military, than Russia and China combined by a factor of 2. We spend twice as much as those 2 countries combined. And what do we have to show for it? Russia has at least 4 or 5 variants of a hypersonic missile. This missile can travel at speeds in excess of Mach 6 and can be steered, maneuvered. The United States doesn't have a single one. China has them too. And an interesting exercise is to go onto one of the AI, engines, whether it's Grok or Perplexity or Chat GPT or DeepSeek, and just ask them a question about U.S. military power. they're all like spin machines. Oh man, the United States has got like 11 aircraft carriers and Russia's got just one. Yeah, those aircraft carriers, how do they stand up to hypersonic missiles?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, we'll grant you. Yeah, they have no chance in hell.
Right.
No,
Right.
and we saw a demonstration of that over the last, 9 months ago in March in the Red Sea, where the U.S. carrier task force, we're in the Red Sea. We're going to teach those Houthis, by God, we're going to open the Red Sea so that any ship that wants to go to Israel can go to Israel without a problem. 7 weeks after Trump, started his version of Operation Prosperity Guardian, Trump declares, the Houthis have capitulated. We're leaving. We win.
Yeah.
It was nothing. It was total bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. So, this is where America has now, in the past, our gunboat diplomacy worked because we could use gunboats, and the people we were using gunboats against didn't have anything could destroy our gunboats. That's not the case now. And look at what's going on off the coast of Venezuela. We've now been doing that for 4 months. The war, we're going to war any minute now. Just any minute now. Come on. We're all geared up. Wait for it.
Yeah. I mean, Trump has recently given a speech where he said, well, here, actually, I'll just play it. It's 1 minute long. It's worth listening to and then getting your thoughts on this.
Talk about the Soviet Union, and I also want to ask about another country that you're targeting, which of course is Venezuela. Do you intend on seizing more oil assets from Venezuela and other tankers?
I wouldn't tell you that. I mean, it wouldn't be very smart for me to tell you that. We're supposed to be a little bit secretive. You're a very big time reporter, and I don't think I want to tell a big time reporter or a small time reporter that. But we are knocking out drugs at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We knocked out 96% of the drugs coming in by water, and nobody can figure out who the 4%. I wouldn't want to be the 4% either, but 96% of the drugs coming in by water. Every one of those boats you see get shot down, you just saved 25,000 American lives. But we knocked out 96% of the drugs coming in by water. And now we're starting by land, and by land is a lot easier. And that's going to start happening. And we're not going to have people destroying our youth, destroying our families. Forget about youth, everybody. You ever see a family with the fentanyl or cocaine? Colombia has at least 3 cocaine factories. That's a different country. We're not happy about it, but we're stopping it. And we've stopped it now on water. You don't even find boats on water. You don't even see fishing boats on water. You want to go fishing in that area? Does anybody want to go fishing in that area? I don't think so.
Yeah, that was surreal. So not only are we dealing now with a question that touched upon tankers being confiscated, but also fentanyl, which Trump is saying that they're actually completely addressing the fentanyl and the drug epidemic in the United States. All drugs coming into the U.S. via water and soon land. He even threatens the question of land, or the possibility of land strikes on Venezuela coming up. That seems to be something that's being floated.
Yeah.
Could you address some of the fallacies in thinking on the entire weird, surreal narrative around what we just heard?
Yeah. So the majority of deaths in the United States from the use of illegal narcotics is caused by fentanyl, not by cocaine, or the cocaine that's ingested, which has been mixed with fentanyl. That's coming out of Mexico. That's not coming out of Venezuela. Venezuela, for good Lord, at least the last 10 years, has, they've been a transit point for shipping cocaine, and marijuana. And it's estimated that about 40% of the cocaine that gets into the United States does pass through Venezuela. But the cocaine's not killing us. It's just it's keeping Hunter Biden up late at night so he can party. Okay, maybe giving Joe a toot. Okay, so he could be alert at his press conferences.
Maybe.
Sorry, yeah, okay. sorry to bring that up, but the major manufacturer growers where the cocaine has been is in Colombia, and the United States has had active programs to support the Colombian government in an effort to, quote, eradicate the cocaine. I don't know if you've ever seen the Netflix series Narcos.
I have not watched it. No.
So
it's like Pepe Escobar stuff, or
yeah, it's the story around Pepe Escobar, and in season 2 of Narcos, you get to meet Ambassador Crosby. Well, Ambassador Crosby in real life was Ambassador Busby, my boss at State Department, aka Buzz. And Buzz was there 92 to 95. And it was during that period that the hunt for Pablo Escobar was underway, and they caught him, and he was killed in a rooftop.
Pablo Escobar. Yeah, sorry. That was
Pablo Escobar.
Weird. Yeah, mental glitch there.
But it was back then the United States had what was called the Kingpin Program. The Kingpin Program was predicated on the notion that we would identify the major leaders of the drug cartels, and we would capture them, arrest them, incarcerate them, and that would cause the drug trade to collapse. One of my retired business partners, he was actually the author of that, and at the time, it seemed like a good idea. How'd that work out? Well, what we discovered is that going after these cartels is like hitting a big ball of mercury with a hammer. The mercury splits, but the mercury itself stays together, intact. It just, you create more cartels, more difficult to control and contain.
Right, like a hydra. You just keep on producing more.
Exactly. The United States problem with international narcotics has been, we create such a crappy lifestyle for our people that they want to, numb themselves, become comfortably numb, to quote Pink Floyd, that the demand is there. The money generated by it is enormous and is corrupting U.S. banks and corporations, businesses. My consulting business, Berg Associates, we spent a lot of time doing money laundering investigations. For example, we went after the tobacco companies. The first one was Philip Morris. Our clients were the European Union and the governors of Colombia, and went after Philip Morris for money laundering because they were taking drug money, knowingly taking drug money, and it was fueling their business. When Philip Morris settled with the European Union for $1.5 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, but the reality is that was 1 week of cash flow for Philip Morris. So it's like, okay, here's your quarter, kid. Go away. Leave me alone. And it's not just refined to criminal organizations. I mean, major U.S. corporations accept drug money. And then you get members of Congress who are corrupted by it. So, part of the problem, in my view, begins here at home. If we would simply genuinely go after the money, if you cut the money off, then all of a sudden the incentive for this business disappears. But we don't do that because money talks, and people prefer to listen to that money talking instead of doing the right thing. So, which brings us back to Venezuela. This is a contrivance. The narco-terrorism narrative that's being fed to the public right now is complete nonsense. If we were really concerned about attacking drugs that are killing Americans, the priority would be first in Mexico, and then secondly, with China to shut down the fentanyl exports out of that country, because that has been a problem. But we're not doing that. Instead, we're going after Venezuela because Venezuela has oil, and this is all about regaining control of that country and its natural resources, if we can. And despite our what I'm watching us do right now reminds me of what I saw when I was at the Central Intelligence Agency, and we decided to get rid of Manuel Noriega. I mean, Noriega had been a CIA asset, had been someone on the CIA payroll. But we finally found him useless. You know, he was no longer someone we wanted to protect or enable. So we decided we'd get rid of him. And we spent more than a year with the Directorate of Operations working a variety of covert actions that were designed to try to provoke Noriega into taking action against us that we could then use as an excuse. See, he hit me.
Right.
So we gotta strike back.
Yeah.
Ignoring the fact that we kept finger poking him and harassing him, and then finally, you know, he would strike back, and then we could justify. See, we were attacked first.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to do with Maduro right now. Maduro is, you know, we're flying F-16s or F-35s over the Gulf of Venezuela, you know, into Venezuelan airspace, hoping, you know, maybe Maduro would fire at us. You know what? It wouldn't surprise me one of these days if we'd go as far as to fire at our own aircraft in order to create. See, they fired at us. We must attack now.
Well, that was Operation Northwoods, right? Like, to the T. And it's not like those ideas were just, you know, entertained and thrown in the trash bin when JFK said no. These ideas continued to bake and boil, and it seems actively shape, you know, psyops and strategic policies. So who knows? I wouldn't be surprised. You're right. If something like another false flag were to happen on any front, that is imaginable, including this one. But what you were saying about the collusion of international corporate and financial mega institutions in top-down management and protection of these narco-terror drug syndicates all over Latin America and the world as a whole, it's a useful thing you just said, because we forget that, you know, and I think we get sometimes too sucked into the drama of the local minutia sometimes that the media frames as sort of like what's behind the drug crimes. But then if you look at, like, we forget that Carl Levin carried out a very important inquiry that proved HSBC to be complicit in laundering hundreds of billions of dollars in drug money. Bonk Coots, the same year, this is like a decade ago, was also found guilty of laundering drug money for decades. This manages the royal family's estates. Then you got the famous photographs of the brazo en brazo there, the grasso en brazo of the former president of NASDAQ hugging Raul Reyes of Colombia in 1999. Saying like, yeah, here, thanks for helping us. Thanks for letting us manage all of your money in Wall Street. This is like the biggest actual narco terror cocaine syndicate and this second in command. So we forget that this actually is much more. You can deal with the drug problems if you allow the mind to just look at and then address what causes the drug problems by design top down, which is not permitted to be, it seems, discussed in polite society, which is what you just brought up. And you've been trying to bring people's attention to this very thing for a very long time. And it's just like, it's not coming up at all in the discussions around Trump's program for dealing with America's drug epidemic, or Carney's calls. None of this is coming through.
Well, I always say the United States, we've got the best government money can buy. And by God, there are some impressive buyers out there. You know, they come from Shady Pass, and you know, we've got the Zionist lobby, we've got the pharmaceutical lobby, we've got the banking lobby, we've got the agriculture. You know, lots of different interests out there coughing money up to lubricate the system. And you know, we saw. You know, again, I give you just one example. we were called in by me and my partners. This is about 20 years ago, but it's illustrative. The security director for John Deere, they're in the middle. They're based in Iowa and Illinois. He had detected some suspicious activity, which basically somebody in Colombia was wanting to buy a tractor from John Deere, and they were paying with money that came from Minnesota through some other bank accounts. And it's like, that's sort of weird. How many Colombians do you know that go to Minneapolis to open a bank account? Not that many. Well, what it was is the black market peso. Black market peso was a system that the Colombian drug traffickers set up where they would have they'd pay for trips for average Colombians to come to the United States. This was in the late 80s, early 90s, and they'd open up bank accounts. That they had to open up, each husband and wife had to open up 5 bank accounts while they're here. They'd get starter checks. They'd take those starter checks back to Colombia. They'd sign them, but they wouldn't fill in the payee or the amount of money. And so those checks are sitting there. These bank accounts that have been opened in the United States are here. And then every day, these what are called pitufos, Smurfs, would go around and deposit money into these new bank accounts. And, when you're looking at thousands of these bank accounts that are getting in, $500 to $1,000 a day, all of a sudden, over time, man, they build up. You got an enormous wealth. And the way the black market peso worked, it was a very simple concept. Now, if you were a farmer and you wanted to buy a tractor from John Deere, you'd have to exchange your pesos for $1. And so you'd have the government say, yeah, we need 10 pesos from you for $1. Okay? But the black market guys are going, come over here. We'll give you, we only need 7 pesos from you for $1. Hey, you're saving 30%.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what was going on. And so then those black market pesos, they would pay with these checks off of these banks that they had opened accounts. And Philip Morris was accepting that money, Japan Tobacco, British American Tobacco, all the major liquor providers.
Yeah.
So I said, this is global. And this attempt to attack Venezuela on the pretext that we're cutting down the flow of narcotics into America, and this is going to make America safe again. It's a distraction. It's a fraud. The cutting off the supply is not the key. Cut off the money.
Yeah.
Because there's always, when you cut off supply from one area, it's just like water. It flows around. It goes some other direction. Okay, then we won't use that route anymore. We'll go use this route. We've been at this now, the war on drug, for good God, at least 50 years. And it's not working out too well.
Yeah, no matter how many local dealers we throw in supermax prisons to become cheap labor, for some reason there's only more drug use and drug production, eh?
Yeah.
Well, but at this point, though, after all of these years of integrating the organized crime and drug money laundering into the conventional system, the conventional economic system, as a matter of course, I don't even know how self-conscious people are at this point, since it's been in place for so long. The way we do, the way that things are done, would it be possibly the case that the whole financial system could be blown out if you actually remove these trillions of dollars of drug-related, criminal profits from the system? Is that even or could that be done in a clean way?
Yeah, they've tried it through, the Know Your Customer programs, etc. They've got anti-money laundering mechanisms in place, but they're circumvented. My partners and I were going to, we approached the government of Mexico. This is about 10 years ago, to bring a civil racketeering suit against Wachovia Bank for money laundering, because they'd been implicated with about $800 billion of laundering drug money. And what was sort of funny about it is the compliance officer at Wachovia discovered it. And when he flagged it to authorities, within the bank, they fired him. So, sends a good message that, hey, if you spot illegal activity, don't say a word or you get canned. And we were on the verge of having Mexico sign up, and then Eric Holder, who was then Attorney General, called the Mexican government and threatened them, and vowed that there would be retaliation by the United States if Mexico proceeded to sue Wachovia. So that's what I'm saying. You get this. It's like a protection racket,
Right.
And that still goes on.
Yeah.
With again, the amount of money is so great that it is extremely tempting. This case with Henry Cuellar, the Democrat member of Congress, he's been involved with taking drug money off of Mexican cartels for, good Lord, 15 years. I mean, I know this personally because me and my partner were working on an investigation about it and working with DEA. And they could never, there's always problem because of political influence. There's always trouble getting him indicted. Now, look, he gets indicted, and then Trump says, never mind, you're free. So it is, I come at it with a very cynical view that this is all about, I guess, finding ways to get paid. And it's, we refuse to actually go after if we actually went after the money and punished people who were involved with taking dirty money, we would shut it down, but we're not willing to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems when the rules of the game that you rigged are not actually even working for you anymore, and you alluded to China coming out with a completely different, very effective economic paradigm, Russia to a lesser extent, but still in harmony with China, bringing a very refreshing way of thinking about value and the behavior of what business economics should be, as far as, creating something real and tangible in the real world that actually also benefits nations and peoples, versus what we've been doing. Then the question becomes, well, maybe just breaking the rules is the way to beat the game or to beat your opponents. And we're currently hearing, somebody here just pointed out in the chat, George just said it's all about getting rid of China from South America, as far as I think he's referring to the aspects of the security doctrine, which call for this Trump corollary. Also, there's currently discussion in place right now to take the confiscation of Russian assets in Europe to the next level. I think it's like 200 billion euros are sitting there that are being there. I mean, there's people who are frothing at the mouth amongst the bankrupt European technocrats who just want to use this. They want to get this money because there's nowhere else that revenue is coming from. So they're getting desperate. So what do you think of these 2 points of cheating that are in play? The idea of possibly confiscating Chinese-built infrastructure across Latin America or the Caribbean, of which there's a lot of it, under the new security doctrine, or the confiscation of Russian assets completely just under the
well, that'll end up blowing up the Western financial system and undermining it. Look, this sudden focus on China in Central and South America, I'm amused by it. Well, I started going to Panama in 1999 regularly to investigate product counterfeiting. The Chinese were so the way the Panama Canal works, it flows north to south. Most people think it goes east to west, but north to south. Panama City on the south, Cologne on the north. In Cologne, there are three major ports, it may be up to 4 now, and each of those ports was managed by Chinese companies. So I mean, we're going back 25 years. So this is not new that the Chinese just didn't suddenly show up. I also did investigations or compliance programs for casinos in both Panama and in Costa Rica. Who do you think the major players in those casinos were? And we're talking 25 years ago. Oh, that would be the Chinese. Okay. and not wealthy high rollers, just, guys off of ships and such. So China has been in Central and South America for well over a quarter of a century. unlike the United States, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative has been all about building up infrastructure, not figuring out how they could screw these countries out of resources, but actually how they could enable them, equip them, make them better. And that message is resonating. We saw when Trump tried to bully China and raise tariffs, China stopped buying soybeans. They turned instead to Brazil. Well, and Brazil now is part of BRICS anyway. But Brazil and China have been doing international trade in their respective currencies. They don't have to go out and get a dollar anymore. And Brazil was more than happy to provide soybeans to China. Be a huge market. It was very lucrative for Brazilian farmers. Even Argentina with Milei, despite his efforts, seen as being in the pocket of Trump, has been, they're selling beef to China. So the Chinese, your commenter was correct that this is about trying to eliminate Chinese influence in this hemisphere. Good luck with that. Not going to happen. The United States is not willing to invest the amount of money that is required to buy the influence where these countries would say, yeah, that makes economic sense to us. We'll abandon China and go with the United States. Because the problem is the United States is a damn bully. We use our economic leverage and clout to bully other countries, to control them, to tell them what to do. The Chinese don't do that, nor do the Russians. And these countries in the global south, they understand that. They understand, if I'm in a relationship with Russia and China, they're not going to be constantly beating me up, yelling at me, telling me what clothes to wear, telling me where I can go, what I can do. We're like that stereotype. The United States is like that stereotypical bully of a boyfriend who tries to be totally jealous, totally dominant. Tells you what to wear, tells you where to go, what to eat. You look fat in that dress. So after a while, people go, you know what? I want to be with somebody who likes me for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
how do you deal with, people often will shriek and will immediately have the trigger upon hearing the types of language that you were using, and that I also use the same thing. I mean, I try to make the same points, but I always get debt trap diplomacy, that you're just duped by rosy colored lenses about China, but there's actually debt trap diplomacy of China's imperialism that is the Belt and Road. I've got a lot of haters that I've encountered. I'm just curious to get your thoughts when you encounter that, and I'm sure you do. Well, how's your response? Everyone's got their own little retorts, but what angle do you take when you reply to such people?
How many countries has China invaded in the last 46 years? The answer to that is one. The last time they sent military forces outside of China into another country was Vietnam in 1979, because Vietnam was attacking Cambodia. Gee, does that sound familiar? We got deja vu all over again. And the Vietnamese actually beat the Chinese. So let's go back over the last 300 years. How many Chinese colonies were there established in Central and South America? None. How many were established in Africa? None. How many countries in Asia did China expand and take over? None. But our narrative today is they're an imperialist power. I go, really? How many military bases does the United States have scattered around the world? Last number I saw was well over 700. How many countries have we invaded in the last 30 years? Or let's go back 60 years. Let's go with Vietnam. And then we get Vietnam, we get the Dominican Republic, we get Haiti, we get Panama, we get Libya, we get Syria, we get Iraq, we get Afghanistan, Iraq again, we get Serbia. If you come from Mars and you land on the planet and you say, hey, give me the rundown, who do I have to be worried about on this planet? the United States would be at the top of the list. The same thing applies to Russia. Again, neither Russia or China come out of a colonial mindset. The United States does. Even though we were separated, tried to win our freedom from Great Britain, we still established colonies, Puerto Rico, Philippines, Guam. We always find a way to excuse it, to justify our action, to make, see, we're about freedom and democracy. Those other people are communists or they're authoritarians. So, China goes around with a Belt and Road Initiative where they are investing their resources to build up power plants, to build up infrastructure in other countries. And are they trying to win goodwill? Absolutely. And it works.
Yeah.
If you've followed Pepe Escobar's recent adventures in China, he's driving in the middle of a desert that's out in western China, and they got 5G, connectivity. I live in south of Tampa. I'm in a place called it's Sarasota. I sometimes can only get like one bar at my house. Okay, I'm not in the middle of the damn desert out in China, and so I said, "Look how good we are." I mean, we're a joke. We keep looking in the mirror, telling ourselves that we're the fairest of them all, failing to appreciate that we have fallen behind. And one simple measure right now is China has universal literacy. The United States literacy rate is 79%. Okay, so we're getting more stupid at a time, in a day and age when reading is critical, and being able to read what's on the internet. Actually, as long as you're just watching TikTok videos, you don't need to read. You can just be entertained and get your information that way. But that means failure to read, failure to develop critical thinking skills. And the less the critical thinking skills, the more easy it is to manipulate the population.
Yeah, and I was struck. I often watch, I follow CGTN, their English language channel. It's the Chinese state news agency, and they've got some pretty good programming. And I was struck by this theme that's been coming up again and again to educate their own people philosophically about how to relate to things like AI, which I don't see anything similar coming out of the West helping to educate and intervene upon, especially the younger generation, which is really susceptible now to, I think, one of the biggest crippling self-mutilations of the human psyche because of addiction and dependency upon AI, generative AI, to think for them, which was already bad with the TikTok video game culture. It was already hurting. As you pointed out, the literacy rates have been dropping. But now on top of that, as people are getting Grammarly and other AI, ChatGPT to compose for them their essays and other things, the cognitive power decline is going to be immense. Whereas in China, there's a lot of effort to try to get people, especially young people, in their movies and their shows and their programming, to think about this danger and the importance of reading the original texts of Confucius, of the analects, and really going to the sources of the classics, which is being also shaped or infused into their films and their 70 episode shows, which have just these moral values and insights that I haven't seen anything similar in the West. Maybe going back in the 60s, there might be a couple of things by John Frankenheimer from the 60s that did a little bit of this, but this is like a real cultural movement that gives me also a lot of reason to have, I think, good, like solid faith in the not to say they can't screw up. Everybody can screw up, but they're on a much healthier course culturally and economically in that sense. And they haven't blown anybody up. Like they haven't, like you said, that's a great example. Just take a list of the hundreds of nations we've regime changed since the Cold War. Yeah. And then compare it to China. And there's no comparison. There's nothing. And we could have done that. Like at the end of the day, that's what gets me too, is we could have been winning the hearts and minds of nations of the world the way China has been doing with the Belt and Road. We could have been building the rail and the ports in Latin America and Africa. We could have done that. But instead, we had a different idea of nation building, which involved, bombing countries back to the Stone Age instead, which it kills me that we could have been doing this. And maybe we can. Maybe somehow, after a bit of pain, as you said, maybe we can learn how to properly build relationships again instead of just destroying people. Maybe. I mean, China's doing it, though, so that's a positive.
The money is too prolific, too strong. You go back. Why did we get rid of Mossadegh in Iran? Well, because he wasn't willing to share the oil with those Western oil companies that wanted the oil. So by God, we got rid of him and put somebody in who would be accommodating to the Western oil interests. And we saw it in Central America with United Fruit. The special interest oligarchs have always been able to harness the intelligence community to serve its purposes. And it's been, I'm not suggesting that there's none of that with China and Russia, but that they pale in comparison to what we're doing and what the Brits have done as well. But we are now at an inflection point in history where the traditional structures are breaking down. They're losing power. There was a time when Rome dominated the world as an empire, and when Greece dominated the world as an empire, but they faded. And it wasn't in one giant collapse, it didn't go up in flames in one day, but the dynamics of the world changed, and all of a sudden there was a new power. And then, basically starting about the 14th century, became more intense in the 15th century, you had this competition between the Western, the European empires and the Ottoman Empire. And ultimately out of that, the European Empire prevailed over the Ottomans, and then proceeded to really write the defining chapter for the last 200-300 years. But that's now coming to an end, and with the emergence of BRICS, with the economic power of China, and again, how did the Chinese achieve this? They'd put together a 5-year plan, and by God, they would, they'd hold people accountable. Here's what we're going to do in the next 5 years. They would actually come up with a plan to do that. And that's why they've got high-speed rail that works. That's why they've rebuilt cities across China. It's not just in, Shanghai or Beijing. I mean, it's, across China, they have built these incredible modern places. And, everybody I've known, talking to Alistair Crook, who's been there, and talking to Pepe, everybody comes back just slack-jawed. They can't believe what they're seeing in terms of modern, clean, efficient.
Yeah. I suggest that people do follow Pepe Escobar's study, his journaling of his experiences in Xinjiang. The guy, he's been to China many times on the ground and has really documented it thoroughly. Jeremy Nell as well has done a whole series. He also journeyed on across West China to just get a sense with their own eyes. Carl Zha's another great analyst, but look for people who have actually been there and can tell a tale instead of looking to CIA connected or adjacent narrative spinners that are fusing messages about what China's doing into our mainstream and even alternative media program. It's pretty ubiquitous. This intention to try to shift people's attention into hating and fearing China as the cause of all of our problems, as the big boogeyman, instead of actually looking at the very provable deep state structures that have been incubating, doing damage for well over a century. Go back to this thing never really left the American Revolution. This has always been this other thing there. And instead of dealing with that, we're all being distracted from the thing that might actually be a great aid to us if we were thinking in a sane way about healing from the self-mutilation that we've been doing, right, for decades of globalization. We could be learning how to build things again if we actually chose to see China's offers for win-win cooperation as a serious thing instead of seeing it as some sort of a threat. So, Larry, we're hitting the top of the hour. I thank you so much for packing in so much wisdom and insight. your Sonar 21 is an essential resource. Again, I keep telling people to go bookmark it, check this out every day. You're prolific. The interviews you do, I just read this morning your newest deep dive into some of the strange but important Trojan horses within Christian Zionism as an ideology and where it comes from and what the geopolitical purposes are. And I really appreciated what you did in that essay. So yeah, that Sonar 21, it's going to be linked in the description box. Any final words you'd like to throw out there to the audience?
Yeah, it's just we're living through a transformative age. I'm 70, so I won't see the end of it. But people your age and younger, it's as important a shift in how the world works as what took place at the end of World War II. So there's a new world economic order coming, not the one that's been envisioned by the World Economic Foundation, but one that'll actually be, let's call it more democratic, in which countries in the global South will actually have a genuine voice in this. And it won't be just the big guys dictating what the little guys must do.
Amen to that. So, Larry Johnson, thank you everybody for joining us in today's Pluralia Dialogos, and looking forward to catching up with everybody again in 2 weeks' time in the same place. Take care.
Thanks, Matt.